It is the 19th of October 2014. A very good evening. My name is Marvinya Wanyasa, and these are just some of the stories that we've compiled for you.
The night of August 1st, 1982, the country woke up to an unexpected attempted coup by rebel Kenya Air Force officers against the government of retired President Daniel Arap Moi. Henry Kimtai Tanui and other former Air Force officers had no idea of what was coming their way when they suddenly heard gunshots.
There was an alarm, and soldiers responded to the alarm. We responded to the alarm. In fact, it was armament, and most of the soldiers were on drinking spree. We were in town. On entering, there was this alarm, and everybody was directing us to the armory.
The Kenya Army had taken over. They saw their fellow Air Force soldiers being led by the army to the large supply store where they were locked up.
Those who were counter fighting the coup, there were many, and they later on overcame the Kenya Air Force and the other soldiers.
The next morning, the officers were forced to sit on the hot tarmac where they spent their day without food or water, after which they were taken back to the store and food was provided. They spent the next 3 days on the runway as they underwent interrogation. Kimtai and his colleagues were later arrested and jailed for some years. They were taken to Kamiti Maximum Prison and later transferred to Langata Prison.
When we were in prison, we were later told, oh, you have been... No, there was this appeal, and the sentence was reduced to 8 years. And then afterwards, there was again commission review. And then later we were told again, you had to serve for 5 years. But I didn't even finish the 5 years.
After the coup, that was the end of Kimtai's service as an aircraft technician. More than 100 soldiers and 200 civilians died. The Kenya Air Force was later disbanded. The work of Kimtai and his colleagues will always mark Kenya's history in their role to defeat the attempted coup. Reporting for WTV News, I'm Weri Mombogwa.
On October 8, 2014, President Uhuru Kenyatta had a date with the ICC chambers. But prior to his attendance, there were concerns about the impact of his attendance. We talked to IPSOS Kenya lead researcher Tom Wolf about this turnaround.
This extra increase perhaps came from the approval over his decision to go to The Hague. Because as I think back over the last 6 weeks since we did our previous survey up till now, I can't think of very many other very positive things that have happened.
Research shows that there is a rise in President Uhuru Kenyatta's approval ratings from 43% 2 months ago to 71%, attributed to his decision to honor his date with The Hague.
Nearly 9 out of 10 Kenyans said that they approved the president's decision to go to The Hague for his status conference after all the uncertainty as to whether he would go or not. That suggests to me, but I can't prove it analytically, it suggests to me that although even before this Hague issue came up, we had between 4 and 5 out of every 10 Kenyans, as you just said, 43% in our last national household survey, who were giving him a lot of confidence.
He goes on to elaborate on the details leading to increased support for the Pesa Mashinani referendum call, as opposed to the opposition-led Okoa Kenya drive.
I think especially with regard to the governor's initiative, at least some of the governors, the Pesa Mashinani, that question will be answered mainly, in my view, as to whether negotiations which have been promised and which to a certain extent have already begun between the executive and these governors through Parliament, whether they will bring about through ordinary legislation at least some of the increase in resources that the Pesa Mashinani initiative is asking for.
All said and done, whether or not the referendi calls will materialize depend squarely on how both parties are organized and the amount of support each party gets from the public. This support will only be attained if the issues advocated for are simplified and well understood by the masses. Reporting for WTV, my name is Agnes Maina.
Making Kenya a competitive nation is the main objective of the Vision 2030 development plan. However, the specifics of doing so provide a major challenge. The development of a planned 24-hour economy can serve as a good starting point. And according to a report by the National Economic and Social Council, harnessing what is arguably the most available resource, time, can make the Kenyan economy more competitive, thereby attracting more investors, both domestic and international.
We are going to start working on the streets of Nairobi anytime soon. In fact, in the next 20 days, allowing the procurement process to go through, we should be able to start off with 116 streets. These 116 are the streets where KPLC infrastructure exists.
The Kenya Power Company has initiated a street lighting program set to commence in a month's time. The street lighting program is a key component in the quest for a 24-hour economy. It is expected provision of sufficient lighting even at night will go a long way in improving the security situation by deterring acts of violence.
The objective of doing this is so that the government can achieve, it is promised to Kenyans that it intends to make this city a 24-hour economy. And we appreciate, perhaps once we have done this particular city, we should be able to expand it to other cities. Why not? And before we know, most of our cities will operate 24/7.
Nairobi City County has approximately 24,000 streetlights and 7,300 public lighting masts, which cover about 30% of the city. About 40% of these lights are not in operation, hence the need for capital investment for refurbishment at an estimated cost of 953 million shillings.
We shall be looking at a sample of this approach, starting with Kibera, and lighting. If we lit Kibera very well, chase darkness out of Kibera, we equally do the road to industrial area, which is Mbagathi Way, light it up properly, and light industrial area very well, particularly those major roads, or rather streets and roads that house major industries. We shall have made the circle complete. In other words, labor will feel safe at their residences, in this case Kibera. They'll feel safe along the way to work and from work, and they'll feel very safe working within industrial area.
The government has promised to make Nairobi a 24-hour economy county, then gradually expand to other counties. The project will aid in increasing employment opportunities through the second and third shifts. Further, there are more benefits and/or justifications to a 24-hour economy, including the economies of scale, meaning the more one produces, the lower the cost of production per unit. The extra money made through extra shift work will obviously enter the consumer and savings economies, leading to increased demand for goods and services and increased investment in the country.
Born in the Kenyan coastal city of Mombasa on 24th February 1933, Ali Mazrui always portrayed himself as a true patriot. He was an African scholar deeply involved in the fight for the freedom of his people. Mazrui's writing and thoughts are embedded in history.
So you can learn what is best in a Western civilization without being under the rule of Western masters.
He also gave an insight into some of the greatest concerns currently facing the world as he wrote about terrorism and Islam. In 2005, Mazrui was selected as the 73rd topmost intellectual person in the world on the list of top 100 public intellectuals by Prospect magazine in the UK. He was a lecturer at the George University in Nigeria before moving to Uhuru Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology during Kibaki's regime. At the time of his death, he was a lecturer at a university in the US. As curtain falls on the African icon, Africans and the world over can draw life lessons from his life and times.
Mega churches more often than not attract millions of followers from inside and outside the country. They have spawned almost an entire economy of their own through hotels, universities, publishing firms and merchandising, making hundreds of millions of untaxed dollars.
Total lack of accountability and transparency in the church system. Therefore, one hopes that it's only a question of time before, even for the good of the church, that there should be transparency. If not, what happens is that the people that run the church, if anything happens to them, then there'll be no records.
Many families and individuals consider the presence of local religious organizations when making decisions about moving to communities and purchasing property. The presence of churches aids in families choosing to establish schools and small-scale businesses in local areas.
We use the income of the church to build schools. We use the income of the church to feed, to serve the need of the poor. For instance, in our church, we run what we call membership empowerment scheme. What we do is to give people money, interest-free money, to start small-scale businesses.
Social scientists consider it irrational to participate in moral and volunteer projects because they have such a low personal benefit. However, being a member of a religious community increases one's duty to serve others.
Strike your bed with the mantle. Whatever can survive under the bed of the source of that grace cannot survive under your bed.
Residents say that churches help communities complete vitally important social projects, which government will need to fund if churches did not provide such support. And now, the surging popularity of the mega churches among the Christians, who make up half of a nation's population, has propelled their preachers into the ranks of the richest people in Africa. Reporting for WTV, my name is Agnes Minor.
And that's it from our news desk. Do have yourselves a blessed week ahead. My name is Wavinya Wanyasa.